I'm Ardell Fleeson, here with Lyndsie Curry, elder attorney, and I'm speaking on behalf of successful people at Fairhaven in their getting prepared to come to a place like ours. I want you to know that being prepared is a key to success in making the senior living decision. And Lyndsie knows a lot from her law practice about how to get prepared to come to a place like Fairhaven. There are many questions, they're overwhelming. I'm hoping that one of the results of today's video is that you feel more comforted about your future, both from a standpoint of where you'll move to and from the standpoint of what you must do between now and then. Lyndsie, would you tell us who you are and what you're going to talk to us about today?
Yeah. So my name is Lyndsie Curry. I'm an attorney here at Stewart Curry, and we practice primarily elder law and probate and estate planning. So we spend most of our day working with folks who are a little bit older, getting them ready for these kinds of transitions.
Great, great. What would you have to say to our audience? I know you've got 10 points prepared for us, which is great. Can't wait to hear the 10 points.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about the 10 things that you need to know the most as you're making the decision to pick a facility, but also just as you're getting older and planning for your future. So the first thing is that the most important thing you can do is free, and that's to have a conversation with your family about what you want the end of your life to look like.
How do you start that conversation?
I think so. It's easiest if you just jump in. No one wants to talk about it, and so maybe have the family over. Honestly, I think if you don't make too big of a deal about it, everyone's more comfortable. So if your daughter's in the kitchen with you and you're cooking, maybe just jump in and say, hey, we're doing some of our estate planning, and I just want you to know the lawyer asked us, what do you want to happen if you're on life support? I don't want life support, just so you know, right? So start the conversation.
So I have many conversations at Fairhaven with adult daughters in particular, sometimes adult sons. How do you advise, Lyndsie, that an adult child bring it up to their parent? How does that start?
Right. I think kind of the same way. I think it's one of those conversations that isn't a big deal until you make it a big deal. And so if you casually say, hey, I've been, working on some estate planning for our family, and it just made me think, what do you want to happen if you can't make decisions anymore? How do you want that to go?
Got it.
And honestly, my experience has been that 99% of people want the same thing. And that most of our clients are very confident about what they want, and that's that they don't want heroics if they aren't able to make life-ending decisions on their own. They want to be let go. And so just know that, your parent probably already knows. They probably have a strong opinion, and if you give them the opportunity, they'll probably pretty happily tell you about it. Right?
What's another point? What's another point you have for us?
So our next point would be that you can say who is in charge when you can't make decisions for yourself. So you have the opportunity today to say, hey, when I can't make my financial decisions anymore, this is who I want to be in charge.
Okay.
If I can't make my healthcare decisions anymore, this is who I want to be in charge.
If the family can't agree on that, how do you advise the family to come to a conclusion?
So I think that's a decision. We're assuming that you as the client or as the resident, you still have the capacity to make that decision. And so I recommend that when you have the capacity, you decide, and it doesn't have to be the same person. That's our next point. So if you have one child who's great at business decisions and you have another child who's much better at handling the emotional stuff, you can put the business child in charge of the business and put the emotional child in charge of the healthcare.
Okay.
And so take this opportunity while you have the capacity to do it to say, this is who I want in charge of what. And ultimately, it's who you are comfortable with.
Got it.
It's not about the kids. It's who do you think is going to handle this best.
That's a great piece of insight. We have a joke in our business that if you can't decide where to move to for your senior living community, you pick the child you love the most and you move next to them. That's a joke. What's another point you have for us, Lyndsie?
Well, kind of going back to that, my joke for people who want to know who to put in charge of their healthcare decisions is to pick the child that you like the least. Because if you're not going to have that conversation with them, it's going to haunt them. So, so pick the child you like the least, or just have the conversation. Because if they know what you want, it's not a hard choice. But if they don't, they're gonna hate you for it later.
Yes.
So make sure you talk about it.
That's great advice. It's all about family dynamics.
Absolutely,
It really
absolutely.
is. So what's another point you have for us?
Right. So if you, we talked about having different people in charge, but do know that if you don't decide who you want to have in charge, there might be a day where a judge makes that decision for you. Okay. So take this opportunity when you have capacity. Go ahead, make that decision. Say, this is who I want to make my healthcare decisions. This is who I want to make my financial decisions. Because if you don't do it, then we're going to have a hearing and go through guardianship and conservatorship potentially later on when you don't have capacity. And that's a much longer, much more expensive, much more emotionally draining process for everyone involved.
Okay.
So take the chance now. So what we're talking about with making the decision of who's in charge is a power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney. And these are very straightforward. You can get them from a lot of attorneys. They are not expensive, and it's a quick, easy process. If you don't go and get those documents, then there will be a guardianship process potentially later on, and that's very expensive and very, very time-consuming for everyone involved.
So you said it wasn't expensive. The power of attorney and the healthcare power of attorney.
Right.
About how much money are we looking at in your
Right.
law practice?
Right. So when we do those types of planning documents, it's a few $100s.
Okay.
So it's really not bad. I mean, this is something that you can go and do, and honestly will save your family more time and trouble than any other kind of planning you can do for them, and it's also the cheapest thing.
Where does it get filed? Does it get filed with the court someplace?
No, you just keep it. So the family members need to have a copy of it. You need to keep the original. And with our clients, we also keep a digital copy because sometimes we'll have kids call later and say, hey, I can't find this. Can you send it to me? So we make sure that we keep a digital copy on record as well.
Just a practical question. How does the family know that you're the attorney who did the work? Let's say somebody can't take care of themselves and there's just been no knowledge.
Right.
How do they find you?
So we usually, the package that we give to our clients, we always put our card in there as well. But I do recommend telling your kids, all of your family members, hey, this is who's been doing my planning. This is who I've worked with. If you have questions, call them.
Got it.
Yeah. So the next thing that we want to cover is that if you do have a judge make the decision, it's going to be very, very expensive.
So what is the decision?
The decision of who is going to make decisions for you. So who's going to be your agent, both for healthcare or for finances.
Does the judge do that because somebody's taken this to trial?
Yes, yeah.
Oh.
So the guardianship process is where you can't make decisions anymore. An issue has come up. Someone needs to speak for you.
Like what's an example issue?
So one of the things that happens a lot is when we have a parent who has dementia and it's progressed to the point where they can't talk to the doctors anymore.
Okay.
So, or maybe they can talk to the doctors, but what they're saying is not in their best interest.
Yes.
So they're saying to the doctors, often this is a paranoia issue,
yes,
which is very common with dementia. So they've gotten to the point of saying, I don't trust these doctors. I'm not going to let you do anything. You're not giving me any medication. And the family knows you need this medication to keep you alive, right?
Yes.
Like you need your insulin. You have to have it. And so then we end up going to court, filing a petition with the court and saying to the judge, listen, this person is a danger to themselves. They can't make their own decisions anymore. Well, when we go and do that, now we're looking at probably spending $5,000, $7,000, and that's assuming everyone is getting along and is on the same page. If it becomes a contentious issue where we have one family member saying, I need to be in charge, and another family member saying, no, not them, I need to be in charge, it can drag out for months, potentially years, and cost tens of thousands of dollars. So we definitely want to take that opportunity early on and say, hey, this is who I trust, this is who's good at making these decisions, and this is who I want in charge. Another thing that people should know is that if you don't have a will, if you haven't done this kind of planning on the estate planning side, so dealing with what happens with your stuff after you pass away, the legislature has one for you. Okay, it's called intestacy. It's a statute that they've created, but you may not like that statute, right? Because based on those rules, half of your money goes to your spouse, if you have one, and half will go to your kids. Well, a lot of people are relying on getting all of their spouse's stuff. after the spouse passes away, especially when we're talking about folks who are in their 70s and 80s. They need it for their own care.
That would make for a very unhappy family.
Right.
I would think.
Right. Yeah. It can cause a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So as you're looking at all of this stuff and as you're preparing and planning, it's a good opportunity to make sure that you have a will and that you're saying where your stuff needs to go when you pass away. Because if you don't, you could have a situation where your spouse isn't able to get the care that they need after you're gone.
Yes. Yeah. What advice do you have, Lyndsie, for us about insurance?
So if you don't have long-term care insurance, your insurance provider is not going to cover skilled nursing or assisted living or independent living. A lot of families are kind of unfortunately shocked by that information. So go ahead and plan ahead that this is something you will need to pay for out of pocket unless you can get Medicaid for skilled nursing, which again takes some planning as well.
So how would you speak to us points on Medicaid?
Right. So the biggest thing I can say about Medicaid planning is that you do not have to spend down all of your money before you can get on Medicaid. There is planning that we can do so that we can protect some of the assets so that it can supplement your care as you're on Medicaid as time goes on, or making sure that we're protecting some of that money for your spouse so that they can get the care that they need over time. Mm-hmm. So I think the most important thing is don't think that you have to spend down to $2,000. Don't think you have to give everything away before you can get on Medicaid. I do think it's important to recognize that this is complicated. It's the Medicaid rule book is about as thick as the tax code. So this is not something that you want to do on your own. You need to work with someone who does this type of work often. Because if you try to do it yourself, and this is one of our big points, if you try to do it yourself, it can cost tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so definitely go and talk to someone because there are things you can do, but you don't want to wing it. This is not a DIY situation.
Okay. What about veterans aid and attendance? Are you experts in that also?
We are, yeah. And VA aid and attendance can be really helpful for the folks who aren't at skilled nursing yet, right?
Okay.
So you still want to be in independent living or you still want to be in assisted living, but you need a little extra help. Maybe you need a caregiver to come in, a few hours a day, or you just need help paying for the facility, especially with assisted.
Can you define how you qualify? Because some people in our
Sure.
audience may never have heard of veterans aid and attendance.
Okay. So for VA aid and attendance, if you are a veteran or the surviving spouse of a veteran who served during a period of war, you may be eligible for in between, I think it's around $1,200 to $2,100 a month, depending on whether you're the veteran or the spouse. Okay, and
I've heard it mostly around $1,800, but do you have to be the spouse? Can you be the divorced spouse?
you cannot be the divorced spouse unless there's a couple of exceptions, but generally, the rule is that if you divorce the veteran, you divorce their benefits.
Got it.
Okay. So, but if you are the widow, then it's going to be around $1,200 a month.
Okay.
But there are some financial qualifications. So you can be over-resourced for VA aid and attendance as well. And so again, that's something where you should talk to an elder law attorney, just go through, hey, am I qualified for this? Can I get qualified for this with some planning? And then we can also refer you to a good veteran service officer if you're already qualified, and they can help you to get those benefits as well.
A veteran service officer works for the VA?
That's right. They work for the VA. So we can kind of help you make sure your ducks are in the row before you go and talk to them. And then you can go and meet with them, and they can help you actually fill out that application and get the benefits.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Do you have another point for us?
Absolutely, yeah. So I think the best way to get started with all of this stuff is just to start gathering information for your family. So we have a lot of situations where a parent has dementia and they've declined, they can't really communicate what they have anymore. And so we have kids who have to just check the mail all the time to see what statements roll in. And unfortunately, property gets lost that way. Insurance policies get lost that way. And so while you know what's going on and you can tell your kids, go ahead and get a packet together for them of your accounts, your insurance policies, a rough idea of assets, any deeds that you may hold, any property. Just make a little book of your financial life and your healthcare and your estate planning and give it to them. I think it's a great Christmas present. so that they know I have everything in one place. I know what's going to happen if something happens to you, and there's a plan going forward.
That's a great idea. We have a family at Fairhaven who just discovered that their mother had long-term care insurance. That's a great thing to discover as a surprise. I'm sure there are many more negative things out there that you can discover than something as lovely as that. I'm going to ask that Lyndsie recap in just a few words each of her 10 tips to us, and thank you so much. Then I have one question after that.
Sure. So the first thing is make sure you talk to your kids. That conversation's free. You can decide who's going to be in charge. You can have different people in charge of your health care and your money. A judge will make the decision if you don't make that decision. And if the judge decides, it's going to be very expensive. If you don't have a will, the legislature gave you one, but it's probably not the one that you want. Insurance does not pay for the nursing home unless it's long-term care insurance. You do not have to spend all of your money down to get Medicaid. Do not DIY plan for Medicaid. It will cost you much more than you think you're going to save. And the best way to get started is just to give information to your kids.
Lyndsie, thank you so much for all your time and all your advice. It's been wonderful. If you had 2 sentences to leave with our audience, what would those 2 sentences be?
So as you're getting ready to do this planning, we would love to talk to you and would love to work with you. So if you would just give me a call, we can set up a time to get together for a consultation.
That would be wonderful. And we thank you all so much.